In the midst of this raging controversy on Ma Kaali, joining me now live from London, the one man who explains Hindu gods and goddesses, our religion, to a young generation of readers and viewers better than virtually anybody else. Best-selling author, director of the Nehru Centre in London, Amish Tripathi. Amish, whenever there's anything happening in the sphere of religion, when there's a controversy to do with our gods and goddesses, you're the one person I think of to try and explain what's going on and why. And it's fantastic to have you with us live from London on the news track. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Welcome, Amish.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. Pleasure being here.
Amish, you would have seen that at the India Today conclave, which we did in Kolkata this week, we had Trinamool Congress MP Mahua Mitro make a comment on Ma Kaali, which has sparked off a massive political storm in India, which I'm sure you're tracking sitting in London. I think this is a good opportunity to reflect on, Ma Kaali as a goddess in the Indian pantheon of gods, and more importantly, this whole fight that we're seeing about people getting offended by comments about our gods, because as I read your books and others, there's so much about gods being liberal, Hinduism being liberal. Now are we heading into a space where there's less liberalism than there has been so far? So let me start by asking you about the controversy itself. And Mahua Mitro describes Ma Kaali as an alcohol-accepting, meat-consuming goddess, and that's the chadhawa that happens at different temples. How do you look at this entire fireworks that's taking place in the overall picture?
Rahul, look, there are discussions that one can have on Hinduism and spirituality. I believe, and I'm sitting in London, but so I'm not tracking it as closely as you would be. But from what I know, the controversy began with some poster in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, where Ma Kaali was shown smoking. To be honest, I don't know what meat eating has to do with smoking. I thought they were two completely different issues. But what I suspect is happening in the modern day, I think it's John Nash's, if you know the Nobel laureate, the brilliant mathematician John Nash's theories in action, really. John Nash had theorized that individuals or groups interact with each other and what are states of disequilibrium and what is a state of equilibrium, what in game theory is called Nash equilibrium. And the state of disequilibrium in most democracies in the West and in India is that certain religions are treated with extreme disrespect, whereas certain religions are treated with extreme respect, sometimes even fear. In the West, for example, Christianity is attacked very aggressively and sometimes nauseatingly by the similar groups, radical woke Marxists, radical Islamists, but not so much, other religions like wokeism or Islam. In India, the religion that is attacked aggressively is Hinduism by the same groups. This is a state of disequilibrium, as John Nash had theorized. So what is a state of equilibrium? Where one state of equilibrium can be where all religions are treated with equal disrespect by the ones who primarily create disrespect in democracies, radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists, or that all religions are treated with equal respect, which is how most Indian Muslims actually behave. Most Indian Muslims will, of course, not be happy if Allah or Prophet Muhammad are disrespected, but in turn, they respect, Hindu gods, Christian beliefs. It's for them Ganga, Jamna, Tarzi.
No, but Amish, the way that I see it, and many others
this is the core problem, which is causing the issues, I think.
This equilibrium that you talk about, Amish, is also one of the hallmarks of our culture. One of the best things about Hinduism is that it's perceived as being a more liberal religion. And when, for example, Salman Taseer was killed because of some apparent blasphemy in Pakistan, most people looked at what happened and said, hey, this can never happen in India because Hinduism isn't like that. With the FIRs, the arrests, people getting offended, many would wonder whether this is seeing our Sanatan culture, our Hindu culture, which so far had been very liberal, become less liberal in the search of the equilibrium that you talk about, Amish?
Rahul, John Nash did not talk about morality. He just talked about how humans behave, right? This is not about how people should behave, it is how they naturally behave. One-way disrespect is not sustainable beyond a point of time. Having said that, what is the thing that I would like? What I would like is actually our traditional Sanatan Dharmic traditions of Vada, of treating religions with respect, but yet gently questioning, which was our tradition. There is no need to insult religions or insult gods or insult prophets just because you want to question. That was our Vada tradition. Satyam Bruhat, Priyam Bruhat. Speak the truth, but speak it with love. So, for example, one can question casteism in Hinduism, in modern Hinduism, by using the wonderful words of Bhagavad Gita rather than being offensive. One can question misogyny in modern Islam by using the inspiring example of Lady Khadija rather than being insulting. One can question child abuse in modern Christianity by using the true message of Jesus Christ respectfully rather than being insulting. And that is the Indian way. That is what I would love to see. The only point I'm trying to make, Rahul, is using John Nash's theories. This wonderful world cannot exist as long as two primary groups, woke Marxists, radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists, continue their one-way disrespect, which they are doing not just in India, frankly, but in fact in all democracies, and are creating extremely troubled times. This is all of us who love debate, but in a modern, respectful way.
But it's also a reality, Amish, that our gods and goddesses from time immemorial have been interpreted in different ways, in different books, in poems. Let me quote to you what this Canadian filmmaker told the BBC. She says in her film she champions humanity, embraces diversity. She's talking about Ma Kaali. As a poet and filmmaker, I embody Kaali in my own independent vision. What is wrong with that? Everyone, you in your books, others who've written on our gods and goddesses have their own interpretation of our gods, and there is no one interpretation which is the only interpretation and there be no other interpretation. This filmmaker says, this is my interpretation of Ma Kaali. She's waving an LGBTQ flag, she's smoking a cigarette. What is wrong with it is the question she asks.
Two things, Rahul. One is, I don't know that filmmaker nor have I heard a statement, so I can't really comment on that. But there are interpretations of all religions. So even Islam has Sunni and Shias, where the interpretations of the scriptures, from what I've been told, I can't say I've read Islamic scriptures, but from what I've been told, they're different. Christianity has Catholicism, Protestantism, Greek Orthodox, where interpretations are different. So this exists, to be honest, in all religions. And every religion, has beautiful things that can be learned from. Every religion has, has things that could be gently and politely questioned and improved. All of us have that. The problem isn't that. The problem is the modern world that we live in, and the situation created by two groups who, and I must clarify that the primary victims of the radical woke Marxists and the radical Islamists are their own people. 80% of the victims of Islamic terrorist attacks are actually Muslims. Most people don't know this. They attack Muslims who they think are not sufficiently pure. You read the Black Book of Communism, the vast majority of the victims of Marxism are actually their own people. So when we push back against these two extremist groups, the primary people we'll be helping are actually Muslims and leftists. They are the ones who are creating much of this unsustainable one-way equilibrium. I'll repeat once again, Ganga Jamuna Tehzeeb can only be two-way. It cannot be one-way. And that is, again, I'm saying it's not about what should be, it is the reality of what ends up
happening. But if somebody has a closed door and a closed mind, must we also close our doors and minds? Not keep our hearts open, as has been the case with India so far?
Rahul, there are two ways of liberalism. One is, the California way, one is the New York way. The New York way, they are liberals, but they're tough. The Indian way has usually been closer to the New York way. We are liberals, but we are tough. And if there's an unfairness that is perceived, then people will push back. Again, I'm not commenting on individual cases. That would be unfair, because the analysis of that must be done through due process. And if a case has been filed, it must be done by the courts. I'm talking about what's happening generally at a broader level. One
But
sees
let
that
me
happening in
quote to you
the West
what
as well.
Mahua Mitro says, Amish.
Huh.
She, at the India Today conclave, we did said, if you go to Bhutan or Sikkim, for example, where they do puja, they give whiskey to their god. If you go to Uttar Pradesh and say you'll give whiskey to your god as prasad, it will be seen as blasphemous. And I have here with me a full range of temples from Delhi to Madhya Pradesh to Gujarat to Odisha, in different parts of the country, where meat, for example, is given as a prasad to our gods, and in several places alcohol is given as prasada as well. That is a reality, but somehow when you say that as a reality, it's almost seen as being offensive. But it's not like a hidden reality, it's the prasad that's given in full public view.
Rahul, one is of course quotation. The second is one of the legal things, the mens rea, the intention with which it was said. There's a Muslim friend of mine in London who showed me a video of Islamic preacher Zakir Naik saying almost exactly the same thing that Ms. Sharma said. And I was confused. So then I asked that, then why are you offended? He said that no, actually it wasn't what was said, it was the way it was said, the intention with which it was said. So I said, okay, that's for a court to decide, that what was the intention with which something was said. I guess maybe it's a similar situation. And this, Rahul, this tends to arise in an atmosphere where there is a feeling of unfairness. I'm saying once again, uh, this is the way human beings will end up behaving if they feel, that they are being subjected to unfairness. This is what John Nash's theory clearly predicts, and you can see it in action.
But the counter to that from the likes of Mahua Mitro, Amish, is her statement. I'll quote to you what she says. I do not want to live in an India where BJP's monolithic, patriarchal, Brahminical view of Hinduism will prevail and the rest of us will have to tiptoe around religion. I will defend this till I die. File your FIRs. I'll see you in every court in the land. So essentially the idea that there is one North Indian or a BJP idea, a Brahminical idea of our gods and goddesses, and because that party is in power, is that one view of our gods now sought to be imposed on everyone else who may not see their gods like that. For them, giving a non-veg prasad to our gods may just be the way it's been for generations, as is the case with several of our Adivasi communities and many others.
Rahul, one will get into Hinduism and this thing separately. That's a separate conversation, and I certainly wouldn't like to comment on the politics of it. But I have to admit, I'm a little confused by the statement, because I never support any political party openly or anything. But I'm a little confused by that statement, because the Prime Minister is not a Brahmin, the Home Minister is not a Brahmin, the President of India is not a Brahmin, the President candidate is not a Brahmin. But Miss Moitra is a Brahmin, actually. Judging by the surname, from what I know of Bengal. So I'm a little confused, because she's kind of speaking against herself.
That's interesting. That's a good counter from Amish.
No, I'm not trying to counter. I'm not trying to counter.
No, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
But if I may, but Rahul, if I may just clarify one thing, that this entire concept of community guilt is something that, again, all of us who are liberal and Indian and follow our traditional ways must counter, because both the left and the right do this to groups that they hate. The left will say that all Brahmins, or indeed all upper castes, must collectively be held responsible for the crimes of a few among them. And the right wing says that all Muslims must be collectively held responsible for the crimes of a few Muslims. They are both the same. And this collective guilt of entire groups is a a Western, Middle Eastern concept, and we must argue against this. This is a highly dangerous concept. Collective guilt towards entire groups, both the left and the right do it, and they use it against groups that they don't like. This is I do not support this kind of approach. We must look at individuals individually for their
I'm
own.
not being able to draw you out and get you to reveal what you think about the fact that it is the reality that in several temples, for example, the Bhairav temple in Delhi, it permits devotees to offer alcohol to the presiding deity Bhairav, manifestation of Lord Shiva. At the Kaal Bhairav temple in Ujjain, apart from flowers and coconuts, a bottle of liquor is often offered to the deities by devotees. At the Panchya Dada temple in Surendranagar in Gujarat, devotees come from far to give liquor and some of the bitings to the devotees. This is the same as in the Manaigarh area of Ahmedabad, the Uttareshwari temple in Odisha, Kashi ke Kotwal as well, where chocolate, alcohol, meat are quite dear to the gods who preside over these temples.
Rahul, I said again, there are, every religion, there are things that can be discussed, and there's a platform for that. And I discussed that. In fact, you can check my old videos. I've discussed that openly. The issue out here is actually not that. The issue out here is a sense of unfairness which is causing people to react in certain ways. And the point is, unless we address that, for example, I'm a very liberal, peaceful person, but if someone makes Gaumutra jibes, for example, even I get upset that this is, okay, I'm liberal and peaceful, so I will not get angry, right? This is at the heart of the issue that you're seeing in India today, and genuinely for for our dharmic traditions and for our ancestors, I wish we can push back against the one-way disrespect that is being meted out by two groups, which is causing much of this this chaos. We assume that only Hindus are liberal in India. I am saying it's not true. Hindus are of course liberal, as every other religious group in India. It's only in India that a Muslim group like the Manganiyars, who can be Namazi Muslims, will also sing devotional ballads to Lord Ram. It's only in India that Christians will celebrate Diwali as well. The atmosphere does exist. The atmosphere is being spoiled by two groups primarily, woke and radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists.
Where does this end? This equilibrium that you speak about and the pushback from Hindu society, where does this end? Does it potentially
look, it's better to quote a Nobel laureate than you or
you tell me what you think. You're a smart thinker yourself. No, hear my question, then respond. My fear is, does this end in an India which is less tolerant, less liberal, less open, where people get offended so quickly that if you say something which in years, like let me give you that example of that Rishikesh Mukherjee film from 1983. When it came in the film, the honeymoon, nobody even commented, or just chuckled at it, laughed it off. Now, you've got Zubair who's been arrested. There's an ED inquiry which is separately ongoing against him. The police has locked him up. He's not been given bail yet. So does that end up in a more intolerant voice? What was just a joke which would be laughed at 83 in 1983 now becomes a criminal offense?
Rahul, in traditional Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and in fact all the dharmic religions, so traditional Sikhism as well, blasphemy was seen as juvenile stupidity, frankly. Not as something that, the Nash equilibrium and the game theory shows very clearly in which two ways this can move. Either all religions are treated with equal respect, or all religions are treated with equal disrespect. It will move in one of these two directions. Where it will move, I don't know. I'm not a crystal ball gazer. But what I would like is ideally going back to our traditional ways, where we do not disrespect religions or gods or prophets. I gently question all religion, but you'll never find a video of me speaking rudely or offensively of any god of any religion, of any prophet or messiah, male or female,
Sure, no,
of
I hear
any
you. That's
religion.
an important, the
And that is
intonation,
the
the
Indian way,
intent,
but that
the
does not
delivery is
mean
important.
that does not mean that we do not question. We question gently, because that's how reform happens, right? That's how improvement happens. I wish we can go back to that, to that way of life, but I suspect that is not possible in any democracy, Western democracies or Indian democracies, as long as these two groups, radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists, keep creating their one-way disrespect issue, frankly.
Let's come now to what happened in Udaipur, potentially also in Amravati, where, offended by comments made by Nupur Sharma and those who supported her line of thinking, we saw beheadings of a kind associated with the ISIS, not common to India. It's happened, but very rarely and over decades, not in frequent succession. Now, that's very dangerous, where you don't have people who've gone to Pakistan across the LOC, been radicalized by the Lashkar. They've seen videos, they've been once. One of them went once in 2014, according to the investigation so far, to Pakistan, but he's largely been radicalized sitting inside our own community. What does that say to you, Amish, in terms of where we are going as a community, as a country, and this fear of us versus them leading to such brutal outcomes?
Rahul, one is seeing acts of such violence not just in India but in many parts of the world, in the West as well, and this is deeply worrying. And this is something that those who speak for religion in all religious groups must speak about, must bring about the interpretations that do not allow things like this, must ensure that unlike what happened with Ilmuddin in Pakistan, that which happened pre-independence in the British Raj era, where Ilmuddin actually became a hero because Muhammad Ali Jinnah and the poet Iqbal turned him into a hero. He did a similar thing actually. This must be combated by all religious groups, and this is unfortunate and extremely unacceptable.
Okay, but that leads to then a blowback, because if, for example, Zubair is arrested, then people would ask, why is Nupur Sharma not arrested? So, you made that point that what she said has been said previously. Probably she didn't say it right, and therefore people found it offensive. But that doesn't mean that she get arrested. No, but that's the point. Everybody then starts calling for everybody's arrest. Everybody gets offended at the slightest pretext and starts wanting to arrest the other person. State governments, police forces get involved. And what is a joke in the past then becomes a criminal offense.
Rahul, you're proving my point actually, that this is what Nash equilibrium is. This is what John Nash said. There's a reason he got the Nobel Prize, because this is what naturally happens. How do we control this? If the expectation is that one side, for example, Christians in the West or Hindus, Buddhists, Jains in India, will continue, in a situation where they may feel they are being treated unfairly, that is not sustainable. You're actually proving John Nash once again. The point is, what is the way out of this? I wish that the equilibrium is not that we move to a situation of extremism. That would be most unfortunate. Our ancestors told us, Ati Sarvatra Varjait, extremism of any kind should be avoided. I wish we can return to a state where we treat all religions with respect, all gods, all prophets, and we speak politely, but we also question politely, gently. That is the Indian way, and I wish we can revive that.
Okay, I've enjoyed this conversation. There are lots to reflect on, think about, no clear answers. But it's important to have heard from Amish Tripathi, got his views on this entire Kaali controversy, and he's given a historical and religious perspective on what we are seeing unfold around us. Amish Tripathi, stay well. Thank you for joining us from London, and hope to have you back again soon, but hopefully not when there is a controversy. We'd just love to talk about your new book or something else that's happening rather than some burning, raging controversy. But thanks, Amish. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rahul.